Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever it is, wherever you are when you're listening to this. My name is Adrian, and welcome back to the Think2Thrive podcast. Today, I'm very, very grateful and happy to have with me Aalpa Pnddya, who's currently in the UK. We've known each other for a couple of years, and Aalpa is currently, she's a learning and development specialist. But she has also a massive history of doing various different things that she's going to share with us throughout the conversation. Aalpa, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. And
thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you. Thank you. If you wouldn't mind, maybe to the audience, give a little bit more of an in-depth introduction as to who you are.
Sure, yeah. As you've said, I've done a number of things throughout my life, but at the moment I'm a mindset spiritual coach or a spiritual mindset coach. Also, leadership and development is something that I'm doing as well at the moment. So training a lot of businesses and corporations in India, in Dubai, and in the UK. And in terms of what I've done in the past, is that something you want me to talk about now, or are you going to ask me later?
Oh, well, I suppose let's go back to maybe not a whole way to baby Aalpa, but to when you were small. Whereabouts did you grow up?
So I was actually born in East Africa, in a place called Tanzania, and my parents moved to the UK when I was 9 months old. So I've lived pretty much my whole life in the UK. It's just that I wasn't born here. So I was bred here, but not born. Yeah, so that's basically in terms of when I say here, I'm living in Leicester at the moment, in a city called Leicester. So yeah.
I don't know Leicester very well. Weren't they a famous football team a few years ago that jumped up into the Premier League?
Premier League. Not doing so well at the moment, though, from what I hear. Not that I shouldn't say this, but I'm not a Leicester City supporter. Yeah, I mean, we're in if we look at regions, we're in the East Midlands.
Okay. East Midlands, I get it. Yeah, okay. My geography of the UK is not very good, Aalpa. So I have a rough idea. And that's where you grew up then when your parents moved to the UK, or was it somewhere else?
Yes, so Leicester was, I mean, we lived in London for about a year first when we landed from East Africa into London. So we lived there for a year, then we moved to Leicester, and I've lived in Leicester all my life. I have had sporadic moments where I've kind of packed my bags and gone off for months on end to various different countries, but my base has been in Leicester.
Cool. And one person I interviewed when I asked the next question, it turned out he was one of 16 children in the family, which is a lot, especially in this day and age. But what about you? Any brothers and sisters?
So there's 4 of us. I have an older sister. I have a younger sister, and I'm in the middle with. I have a twin brother. So yes, I'm a twin basically.
Okay, that's interesting. Don't meet too many twins. And so what was life like for you as you were growing up? What about your folks? What do your folks do, or what did your folks do? I presume they're probably retired at this stage.
Yeah, they're retired at the moment. My dad, so we had a business. We had what we call an Indian sweet shop. So Indian sweets that we have during one of our biggest festivals, Diwali, which is like our Christmas. So we used to have a shop in Leicester where we sold a lot of Indian sweets and savouries. My dad also used to work for BP Chemicals as a quality control manager. My mum has always been a housewife. She's kind of brought us up. I mean, she did work for a few months, but she's basically, there was 4 children to bring up. So she did the hard work, which was being a housewife and caring for us. So yes.
For sure. That's a really tough job. I know my own mum, for most of our life, when we were young kids anyway, she did the same thing later in life when we got a little bit. I'm one of 3, the youngest of 3 boys. So God bless her, looking after three boys as we were growing up. But when we got a little bit less of a handful, she got out into the workplace, which was great. It's curious because you're self-employed, yeah, as doing the spiritual mindset and leadership. It's your own company that you're doing.
That's right, yeah. So I've just actually wound down one of my companies. So I say one of my companies. I'm starting up a new business, new company, but the company that was a whole part of the whole coaching side of things, that I've wound down because I want to start fresh, and I want to start from a different perspective. So that's in the I would say in the early stages of setup, all of that kind of stuff. Because I've moved into training and leadership development for companies and businesses, as I say, in India, Dubai, and here in the UK. What I was doing earlier was mindset coaching, but it was just more, it wasn't really corporate. It was just, one-on-one and group sessions for individuals. But this is more kind of corporate based.
Okay, cool. I always wonder when a lot of the people that I interview on the show, they're nearly all entrepreneurs, self-employed, people who go out and create something, make something, as opposed to what we call the regular 9 to 5. And I'm always curious, and there's been a common denominator in nearly everybody that I've interviewed so far, that there's been somewhere in their youth a spark. There's been some person that they looked up to, maybe not a formal mentor, let's say, but somebody that inspired them maybe to go on their own path. Would it be fair, maybe your father being an entrepreneurial type, that he was the inspiration for you, or is there something more?
Possibly, because they had as I say, a sweet mart back in Africa as well, which was a very big business that they had there, which was running from my grandfather started it, so it was running from generations. So they were all business minded, but I think I was the first person in terms of siblings to start my own business and leave a job. I used to work for British Telecom in a call center, and I was there for 14 years. But it was there where I realized that actually this job is not for me. If anybody's worked in a call center, you will know that you've almost got like a big brother watching over you all the time. Everything is stats. Everything is, how many calls you're taking. Your holidays are not your own holidays. You have to, kind of make sure there's enough bums on seat, forgive the expression, but before you can take leave. So I did feel for those 14 years that I wasn't really able to have a social life, or I was missing out on a lot of family events and things because I had to work, and Christmas and Diwali and stuff like that, we weren't getting the leave as and when we wanted. So I thought enough is enough and something has to change. And it was at that point, so I'm talking about 2013, when I realized that actually, do you know what, I'm better than this. I don't need to be in a call center. There's something else. And Adrian, at this point, I would want to say that when I was working in BT, I was actually holding down 3 jobs. So I was working part-time at HMRC, which was known as the Inland Revenue at that time.
Okay, yeah.
My background actually is in radio, so I'm a radio presenter, and I've been in the industry for 27 years. So I was doing a radio show, breakfast show in the morning, then went on to do the government inland revenue role part-time, and then in the evenings I used to go to BT and do a 3 till 8 shift. So I was holding down 3 jobs. And I think, and I'm sure we'll talk about this because I know you teach this as well yourself, paradigms. So I think this was part of my paradigm that I grew up, because as a youngster, I saw my father, who used to work 3 shifts, working for BT Chemicals. And he used to do a morning shift, an afternoon and an evening, night shift. And, bless him, we hardly saw him as growing up, because he had 4 hungry mouths to feed, bills to pay and all that kind of stuff. So I think from a very young age, I realized that and we had the best of everything. He provided, they provided us with the best. So I think I grew up with this paradigm that if I want to live a good life, I've got to work all the hours God sends. So that's where those 3 jobs came. Eventually, I let go of the tax office job, and I had 2 jobs. I was working as a radio presenter, and that wasn't really work. I think that's where I was enjoying what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then I was doing the BT job. So yeah. So at that point at BT in 2013, giving you a long answer so you can edit this, but my point is there was a voice that was saying that, there's more, you need to get out. And at that time, I didn't know what that more was, but I knew I wanted to work for myself. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I didn't really want to be working in a call center all my life, because I joined thinking that I would only be in this call center for a year, 2 years maximum, but I ended up being there for 14 years. And that was because the pay was really good for what I was doing, which is what I thought at the time, that it was good pay. And I was thinking, well, I just got really complacent, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, the turning point was in 2013 when I realized that, no, there's something that I need to do for me and for myself.
Very good. I can really resonate with that, Aalpa, because to a certain degree, my own history is similar. I wasn't doing 3 jobs, mind you. So my hat's off to you on that one. I don't know, when did you sleep?
I didn't. I'm catching up with it for now. So right, I'm not really doing much at the moment. So apart from doing this leadership training, which is contractual, so I have a lot of spare time at the moment.
Yeah. But it's funny, you mentioned paradigms, then you mentioned your father working 3 shifts, and then you mentioned you working 3 jobs. And I know and I know the paradigms that we have, most of them we inherit from our parents and their parents, etc., etc. And it's just a really cool sort of synchronicity there between 3 shifts and 3 jobs. It's like you're doing exactly what you were programmed to do.
Yeah.
Was there, thinking back on it now, do you think there was, again, we said before we came on air, the concept of the Think2Thrive podcast is to try and inspire people who are maybe where you were back in 2013, to believe that, if Aalpa can do it, then I can do it, or if Adrian can do it, I can do it. Do you remember back, was there any one particular thing that was like the straw that broke the camel's back, or was it more death by 1,000 cuts?
This is going to sound really weird, but I think what I started to do is I started to watch YouTube to get inspiration and ideas of, okay, well, if I don't want to work in a call center for the rest of my life, what am I going to do? And that's when I came across Bob Proctor. So I was watching some videos, and I ended up watching The Secret, which everybody, I'm sure, has heard and knows about. So I watched The Secret, never ever heard about it, didn't really know what it was. I knew there was a book out on it as well. And at that point, I started to hear what all the speakers, it wasn't just Bob, it was a documentary where there's a lot of people that were on there. But what Bob Proctor was actually saying started to really resonate with me. And I realized that actually this is all a mind game. And if I want to win in life, I need to understand what's going on with my mind and my thoughts. And I just set out, and I remember it was a Tuesday. It was in November 2013. It was a Tuesday evening. I just got back from BT. It was around about 8:39, 9 o'clock at night. And I was trying to wind down. I was thinking, what can I watch? And I was flicking through the channels. I ended up on YouTube, found this video, watched it, and I said out aloud to myself that I'm going to meet this man and I'm going to work with him. Now, I didn't know what I was doing there, and I didn't know what affirmations were or anything like that. I didn't know what speaking it out into the universe. I just said it. And after that, I started watching a lot more of his videos, and things started to resonate with me. And I started to see subtle shifts in my own life. And it was in March 2014 when I made the decision to quit my BT job and actually do something else. And when I said I'm going to meet Bob and I'm going to work with him, I thought the only way I'm going to do this is let's use my journalistic skills and write an email to Procter Gallagher Institute, which was his company, and see if I can get an interview with Bob. Because being a radio presenter, I thought let's see if we can get an interview with him. So I wrote to them, and it took them 4 months for them to actually reply back. I'm sure that because for those of you who don't know who Bob Proctor was, bless him, he's not with us any longer in body form, but he's a high profile person in the personal industry, and obviously they're not just going to say yes to anybody who just says they want to interview him. So it took him 4 months. Anyway, I told him I'm a BBC radio presenter, want to interview him. So they said, that's great, we can give you 10 minutes with him, but you're going to have to fly over to Canada to see him because he's doing a seminar like he used to do. So I paid the price. I quit my job. I book a flight to Canada, and at the same time, I wasn't just going to interview him. I ended up enrolling into the Matrix program that they were doing. So it was a 5-day event in Canada, Toronto. I had half an hour with him. Mm-hmm. And I interviewed him, or tried to interview him. But when I did try to ask him questions, I've met a lot of celebrities and interviewed a lot of people working for the BBC and the radio career that I've had, but I've never been kind of starstruck by anybody. And when I met him, I just got so emotional, I burst out crying. So that was that. There was no real interview. And all he did, bless him, said to me, "Are you okay? Do you want to come back tomorrow?" And I said no, because in my head I was thinking maybe I'd never get to meet him again. So I said, no, I'm okay. So he digs into his pocket and hands me his handkerchief. I said, here, wipe these tears. And I said, I'm sorry, I never do this. He goes, well, maybe it's about time you did then. So that's how the introduction of it all happened. And then he said, look, I think you should become a consultant. And that's when I started my own business. I joined Procter Gallagher Institute and partnered up and became a coach.
Mm-hmm. Talking about making an impression, Aalpa. I'm sure that's one he didn't forget.
Yeah, bless him.
Cool. It's funny. The secret was probably one of the starting points of the change of my thinking also, but in book form.
Okay.
Not the movie. The movie came after for me. I was sitting in Dublin Airport. It must have been November as well, because I think I was heading over to Germany. I was working for Six Rent-A-Car at the moment, and it was one of these stupid early flights at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I was at the airport at 4. I was sitting there waiting, and in the bookstore, and I saw this little brown book called The Secret. And for some reason in my head, I thought it had something to do with the Da Vinci Code, the movie, the Da Vinci Code. And so I picked it up and I bought it, and then I sat down and I started reading it, and I couldn't put it down. I think I read most of it by the time I got over to Munich on the plane, despite normally conking out on the plane when it's that early in the morning. But it's amazing that book and that movie has had a huge impact on millions of people around the world.
Yeah.
And the whole concept of the law of vibration and the law of attraction obviously had a huge impact in how I deal with things, and I'm sure with you too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think The Secret was another turning point. Obviously, after I saw the documentary and then I read the book, and by that time I was already into this personal growth development kind of information. And the more I read, the more I learned, the more I wanted to know. So it was just forever getting all the books, reading them, studying them, implementing them, and then obviously learning more about yourself. And it's more about implementing the ideas that you're reading rather than just reading. And I think that's when people start seeing the shift. A lot of people have read The Secret that I've spoken to, but they're saying, yeah, it's a great book, but I've not really seen any change in my life. And that's the crux of it, that you've got to implement what it's telling you. And as we know, being Procter Gallagher consultants, is that The Secret did miss out one crucial element, which was all to do with, they made the law of attraction the primary law, but it wasn't, So, we learned later that it's the secondary law. And of course, the book, The Secret, was the whole kind of manifestation from The Science of Getting Rich. So once I learned that, I started reading The Science of Getting Rich and learned more from that book. And then we're introduced to Think and Grow Rich. But I know Think and Grow Rich has made millions and millions of millionaires, but I could never connect with Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
And Bob, if Bob's hearing this up there, he's probably going to think, what? I taught you all the principles of Think and Grow Rich, and you're saying you can't connect. I couldn't connect with the book.
It's the language, I think, Aalpa, because it was written in the 1920s. It's not that it's written in Old English or anything like that. It's just that the language of the day and the examples and the people that are in it are very hard to resonate with because we don't know who they are. If we were to put ourselves back in the shoes of, even 80 to 100 years ago, and I'm sure an awful lot of the people that are mentioned in it, because I have the book here, I have it on my desk and I read a little bit of it most days. But I get 100% where you're coming from. It's not the easiest book to connect with. I know Sharon Lecter, because I did a book with the Napoleon Hill Foundation called 3 Feet from Gold. And it's a sort of a modern retelling of Think and Grow Rich. And I love reading, and I also love listening to books. So I have that one on my Audible from yesterday. So and I only got it yesterday to listen to.
Talking of Sharon Lecter, she wrote her version of Think and Grow Rich for women. And I read that, and there was more of a connection there. I don't know, because it was just for women, but it was more for modern day, the modern day woman. And I could connect more to that than the old Think and Grow Rich.
And I think it's a really good point. Finding the person that you connect with is important to try and help you on your personal journey or personal growth journey. I started listening to another book with my wife. Mel Robbins?
Yes.
The Let Them Theory. Yeah.
Yes, Let Them.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic one, and God bless my wife. She's probably tired of me saying all the things that I say to her all the time, because all of the stuff I learn, I want to share, and sometimes oversharing. But she really resonated and does resonate with Mel and her story and her way of telling the story. And I suppose when I, probably like yourself as well, when I started on my own personal development journey, I resonated very much with Bob. Tony Robbins, who's probably the #1 personal development, let's say, guru or well-known person in the world. He's too much energy for me. I couldn't keep up with him.
It's so funny that you say that, because I'm the same. Nothing against Tony Robbins, but I couldn't gel with him. I just found him too much out there, too much like. I think it's the voice. It was just too heavy for me. Yeah. So he does some great stuff, and he's very well known all around the world. But again, somebody I couldn't really connect with.
But it's the same message, and this is the bit that I love is no matter who that you listen to when you think about personal development and personal growth and stuff like that, it really is, and even business and leadership and all that. It's not that it's a new message from every single person. It's the same message, just told in a different way. And for anybody listening, when you find the person that you resonate with, then that's where you go deep, let's say. So rather than getting a little bit of Bob, a little bit of Tony, a little bit of Mel, a little bit of whatever, you find that one person that you resonate with and then go deep into their stuff, because it's the exact same message as everybody else is saying, I believe anyway, but just in a different way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. No,
So,
I was just going to say, carry on with your next question.
okay. We mentioned the law of attraction, and there's, depending on where you look, there's either 7 or 12 universal laws that happen throughout the world. The ones that we don't get taught in school, let's say, or that we don't get taught in normal life. Pardon me. The law of vibration, and then the sub-law, the law of attraction. And you're right. The secret was really, really cool. And a lot of the things that people talk about in relation to the law of attraction is almost like you just sit there and you think about it and you believe that you're going to get, and you think about it and it magically appears. I suppose what you and I have learned is the next step after deciding what it is that you want and believing that you're going to be able to achieve it is to do what? Is to actually do something.
Well, first of all, you've got to assume the wish fulfilled. That's the way I'm going to go with it, because for me, I know there's this huge thing about the law of attraction. Especially on social media, everybody's talking about the law of attraction. Of course, in the last few years, it's been manifestation. They're the buzzwords that we seem to be hearing. But I think after studying all of this and being in the personal growth industry this is my 12th year now, for me, it's the law of assumption, because we don't suddenly think about manifesting something. We wake up one day and decide, I'm going to manifest X, Y, Z. We're manifesting all the time through our thoughts, through our feelings, through our actions. So it's just that you're doing it subconsciously. But where the law of assumption comes in, that's the biggest law that I think that actually gives you quicker results, because you're assuming that you've already got what it is that you want. And when you can get into that energy, which we know everything is energy and vibration, when you can get into that, that's when things start to happen on a much bigger, quicker scale than the law of attraction, because it's all to do with what are you vibrating at first. As I've mentioned, law of attraction is a secondary law. The primary law is the law of vibration. So what are you vibrating at? That's what you're attracting. But higher than that law is the law of assumption. That what are you assuming? And then if you are behaving and acting like the person that you want to become, you're already it.
I think that's a piece that a lot of people, including myself, have fallen down on in the past, is the assumption piece. I love what you say about, acting or being the person that you want to become. It's a lot different in my mind, because I hear people talking about fake it till you make it all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not a term that I am I'm well endeared with. But how would you differentiate then, if somebody was to explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, let's say, the difference between fake it till I make it and assuming that I already am what I want to be?
Well, if we change that word to faith it till I make it, rather than fake it, faith it. You've got to have faith, which is a little bit different than your belief. So once you have the faith in yourself and what it is that you're doing, the belief will start automatically coming through. But you've got to have the faith that no matter what it is, I will get there. Whatever it is that you want to achieve in your life, it all starts off with faith. And I think this is where the whole spiritual side of it comes in, because there is a spiritual aspect. And without the spiritual aspect, your manifestation is going to be a lot difficult. That's what I've learned and understood within the last 12 years of me being in personal growth, that there has to be a faith, but attached to that, there has to be the spiritual element, because you are a spiritual being first, living in a human human body. So you're going to connect, you have to connect with the spiritual side of you. And that is then where you're having to find out who you really are and the powers that you've already been gifted with, and how to use those powers and weapons, if we call it weapon. I mean, if we look at a superhero, every little children have this superhero, but you are the hero, you are a superhero. You've been gifted with all the superpowers. But how do you get into that, and how do you tap into that? How do you use those superpowers to your advantage? That's what we're having to learn. Once we can get our heads around that, that's when the manifestation becomes a lot easier.
Yeah. It goes against, again, I suppose what many people would believe, insofar as, I'm sure you've heard it before, I'll believe it when I see it, which is the counterintuitive way that we say is that you need to believe it, or as you say, you need to have the faith that it's going to happen so that you can believe it, so that you can see it. And anything like this is sort of a chain reaction, isn't it? The first thing has to happen first before any of the rest of it happens.
I think you have to see it first. You know, as you've said, that the common saying, I'll believe it when I see it. But have the belief first, see it in your mind's eye, and that's when the manifestation will happen. So the seeing has to be there as well. That's your visualization. So you're using your higher mental faculty there, using the visualization, the imagination to see it. And once you see it in your mind's eye, you can then create it in your 3D world.
Cool. What sort of tips would you give to the listeners about how to be able to imagine it, or how to be able to get that picture in their mind?
First thing is clarity. The thing is, people haven't got a clear idea. When I say clear, I'm talking crystal clear idea of what it is that they really want. They're moving from one thing to the next. And the other thing is, you've got to have patience, which is what people don't have. We live in an instant world these days. Everything is instant. So we need to be able to have patience first as well. So I would say, in order to manifest whatever it is that you're trying to do, is first be able to visualize it. So be clear with what it is that you're trying to do. Write it out on a sheet of paper. Write the thing out, write it out in a sentence, write it out in a paragraph, write an A4 sheet of it. Your ideal life, what is it that you really, really, really want? And in the industry, you call it a self-image script, because there's certain things about you that you want to have, but you're not that person yet. So you've got to become that person, the characteristics, the belief systems, the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you think about things, what do you believe about you? So you've got to do a self-scan of yourself first and look at, okay, this is me right now. This is what I think of me right now. And you've got to be honest with yourself as well. This is where I want to be. So this person that I want to be, how do they behave? How do they act like? How do they walk? How do they talk? How do they dress? How do they speak? And then adapt all of those things in your script. And then once you've got a script ready and you're crystal clear about what it is, your vision, that's when you start visualizing that and you start seeing that. And this is where we've got to have the patience, because this is where that visualization process comes in, or meditation comes in, where you start to see it in your mind's eye first, because as we've learned, everything is thought of first in your mind before it's created in your physical world. So if you can't see it in your mind, how are you going to even see it in your physical world?
Yeah. The clarity piece and and patience. I love the way you phrase that. You probably have come across this before, where people will be focusing on one particular thing that they want, and then they get what I call shiny object syndrome. Is they see the next thing that they want, and then they start looking at that, and then they see the next thing and they start looking at that, without, first of all, I think Bob used to always say, you can have whatever it is that you want, but you need to do it one thing at a time. You can't concentrate on everything at the one time. Paraphrasing, obviously, but it's along those lines of having the patience to work on and decide on, let's say, your major goal first of all, what it is that you want. Once you've achieved that, then obviously going on to the next thing. So you need to have the patience to stick with one thing at a time, and not everything at once.
Yeah. And also something that you've just said, Adrian, which I think is a crucial thing, where you said, what do I want, or what do you want? And that is the key, because, and I made this mistake. I was going after things that other people had, thinking I wanted it. But when I realized that that's not what I want. I'm just doing that. And I think a lot of people do that. They see, and social media is to be blamed for this. They see other people living a certain lifestyle or having a certain thing, being a certain way. And so we start copying, and we start saying, well, I want that. I want to do that. But do you really? Ask yourself the question, do you really want that? And when you start to ask yourself, what do I really want? Not what anybody else wants for me. What do I want for me? That's when you can get the clarity, because most of the time, I would say 80 to 90% of people are going after certain things that other people have got, and they don't really even want it. And I can say that hand on my heart, because I did the same. When I first started, I did the same. I was going after certain shiny objects and things that other people that I was seeing in my industry have. But I soon realized, actually, this is not what I want. What is it that I want?
Like fancy cars and big holidays and that sort of stuff.
Cars, holidays, certain way of living. We're all individuals. So it has to be, what do you want? And that's the key.
What would you're familiar with Esther Hicks or Abraham Hicks, I'm sure as well, yeah. What would you say to somebody who says that they say that they don't know what they want? Because Esther used to talk about this, or still does probably talk about this all the time. That people always, as soon as you ask somebody what they want, they turn around and tell you, well, I tell you what I don't want. Yeah. So how would you get people to get the clarity on what it is that they do want?
I think the answer's in the question there. When they say, I tell you what I don't want, they start listing off all the things that they don't want. And actually, they will end up coming to the bit that they do want. Because everything that you're saying you don't want, the opposite of that is what you do want. So it's process of elimination, going through everything that you don't want, and actually the opposite of that is what you do want.
So for anybody who's listening, if what you say that you don't want to be broke, for example, because that's one for a lot of people, rather than phrasing it in the way that I don't want to be broke, you would say, I want to have an abundance of money, for example.
Yeah, I want to have an abundant life. I want to have a rich, wealthy, abundant life. And the abundant is the key word, because abundant is everything. It's not just, I think a lot of people just focus on money. But yeah, money is a great tool to have. But if you haven't got your health, then what are you going to do with all that money?
Yeah.
If you haven't got good relationships, what are you going to do with that money? So you've got to ask for, in all aspects of your life, the key areas: health, relationships, career, work, business. So abundant. If you say I want to live an abundant, rich lifestyle, that kind of includes everything. Rich, healthy lifestyle.
Again, it's more clarity on it, Aalpa, like you said. It's not just I want to be able to see £1 million in the bank. I want to have the lifestyle that having £1 million in the bank allows me to have. Yeah. Cool. Something that popped into my head, and I wrote it down, is because the spirituality aspect of what you're about and what you're teaching and what we've spoken about, and then your leadership training in the corporate world. For a lot of people would believe that the corporate world is probably devoid of any sort of spirituality whatsoever. How do you bring that message into that sort of leadership and management training that you're doing at the moment?
Very subtly. And soon as I see that somebody is actually connected to what I'm teaching, then I go deeper into it. And in the corporate world, you have to start very subtly. But having said that, the pattern that I'm seeing in the corporate world now is that people are connecting to the spiritual aspect of things. They have realized slowly that there is another element, there is another side or another thing that they're missing, and that needs to be incorporated in. And it is really just tuning everybody back to who they really are, and getting them to understand that. So initially, it's, I would say, a bit of a challenge because there are certain people who will just deny all of that kind of information. But there's certain techniques and ways of how I do that, and to slowly bring them into it, and then they start realizing.
And the bit that I always find with the knowledge that we've learned over years, insofar as how the mind works and how people think, and the importance of the relationship between thinking and results, etc., is something that's probably, again, not very common in the corporate world, but can have a huge impact in it, I believe. And I'd imagine, I don't know your training, Aalpa, that you're doing, but I'd imagine there's a huge portion of that within it. Would that be fair?
With what we've learned through sorry, phrase your question again. The proper work that we've learned, is that what you mean?
Yes, yeah. So the relationship between the thinking and the results, so that correlation between the two, and how to bring that into the corporate world, or where does it fit within the corporate world?
Well, I think even in the thinking into results, I mean, it talks about who you really are. You're a spiritual being living in a human body, having an experience. You're gifted with an intellect. So I start off with that. My whole training start off with who you are, and I go through those 3 phases of who you are as a person. You're a spiritual being, and I start to connect them more to that side of it. Then I'll say to them that you've got a body that you've been gifted with, but your intellect is something that you've been gifted with as well. But your spiritual side of you is what's doing all the manifestation, if you like, and it's your consciousness. So I do a lot of talk on consciousness for people to understand who they really are and how easily then manifestation can happen. I teach a lot of Neville Goddard stuff because he's all about that. And I think when we were talking earlier about who we resonate with, Neville is somebody that I utmost resonate with, and his book is, or his books are the ones that I've always kind of had by my side and referred back to, because what he talks about makes so much sense to me and to those people who I'm talking with and helping.
I have Neville's books somewhere, not here, downstairs, but I love the Barbados story. I think that's one that's very easy for people to begin to understand what Neville's about, I suppose. So maybe I'll put a link to that in the description later on. We completely didn't talk about life as a radio host. You're the first radio host that I've interviewed, and that's for me, that's a really cool job. How did you get into that, and did you enjoy it? Did you like it?
It's interesting because it actually links back to exactly what we were saying, but at the time I didn't know that's what I was doing. So from a very young age, at the age of, I think, 9, 10, I knew that I wanted to be a radio presenter. I just knew that. But I didn't know how to go about that because I didn't have anybody in the family who had any links to the radio station or presenters, etc., etc. So as a young girl, I used to kind of use a hairbrush as a mic, stand in front of the mirror and pretend that I'm doing a radio interview or presenting a show or playing music. So when I say it's interesting how we're doing it, so this was all part of my manifestation visualization, that I didn't know I was doing it, but I was just doing it all on a subconscious level. And because I was so passionate about being a radio presenter, it came about at the age of 21 when we had a family friend who had a friend in who was a radio presenter at the BBC Radio Leicester, and she put a word in for me to say, I've got a friend who wants to join radio. Do you need anybody? So I started off as taking telephone calls for the BBC on radio shows, and ended up making coffees for presenters. And so I started from ground up. And then I said, look, I really want to get my voice on radio. And they could see that I was really interested and I had a passion. They sent me on a 3-day radio course at Broadcasting House in London. I did that. And then I got invited to do co-presenting with some of the presenters. And then eventually I was given my own show. So it comes back down to knowing what you want, having a real passion for it, and then just going with it. And the universe opens the doors. So who would have thought that we have a friend that has a best friend that works in the BBC? But as soon as you start to align yourself and become really, really clear with what you want, things start happening. So after that, I then left the BBC, went on to do commercial radio because I got given a flagship breakfast show. So I did a weekday breakfast show for 14 years. Then I went back to the BBC. They offered me a Sunday night show. So my radio career, as I say, spanned over 26, 27 years. And it all started off with just being a little girl who had a passion of getting her voice on the radio. That's all it was.
That's phenomenal. Do you still do it, Aalpa?
No, at the moment, what I'm doing is, so I left radio in, I think 5 years ago, I think I left. And no, when I joined PGI, so 2014, no, tell a lie. It's been so long. I left radio in 2017 because I wanted to focus more on the coaching side. I wanted to get the business going and focus on that. And now I've started my own YouTube channel. So I'm talking a lot about what we're discussing, more on the spiritual side of things on my own YouTube channel. So it's more of a podcast on YouTube that I'm doing. And I started that in July of last year. So that's what I'm doing.
Awesome. I'll need to get the link of that from you, and we'll put it in the description as well. So where people will be able to find you if they resonate with the story that you're telling, which is cool. Wow. So any plans to get back onto BBC or onto any other radio?
I think if the right opportunity comes, the right show comes, definitely. But I think with radio stations, you are restricted in what you can say. There's a lot of red tape and what you can play, all of that kind of stuff. And for me, I just wanted to do something where I'm not really controlled by, what I say, how I say it, what I play, what I don't play. And I thought the only way I can do that is do my own podcast. And I think more and more people are leaning towards podcasts these days. I do think radio is slowly becoming a thing of the past. Youngsters these days, they don't listen to radio stations. They've got everything on their phones, and they've got their own playlists. And so that's the way things are going. And I think YouTube and podcasting is the way forward. So I'm happy doing my own podcast without having to ask for permission as to whether I could do this or have this guest or that guest and go through various different red tape.
Yeah. I can understand that. What's the name of your YouTube channel?
It's called The Conscious Mic with Aalpa.
Love it. Cool.
But the content on that, I will say, the content on my podcast YouTube channel is more focused and more orientated around Hinduism in terms of what spiritually we talk about. I think Bob mentioned it in Thinking Into Results program. He mentioned all the various different religious textbooks, and they all say the same thing. So in Hinduism, our textbook is the Bhagavad Gita. So a lot of what I talk about is from the Bhagavad Gita and what it teaches us. So it's a way of life. So it's very spiritual, but makes a lot of sense, and it brings in everything that we're talking about here in a different way.
Yeah, it's funny that as well. Because that's a belief that I have as well, is that all the different religions, the core message that each of the different religion is trying to get across is exactly the same. If you boil it down to without all the stories that go along with it, but if you boil it down to the core message is very much the same. And I wish all the different religions could get on a little bit better, because once you have the belief that your religion is superior, that means that somebody else is inferior, and then that mine is better than yours and all that sort of stuff. Whereas in reality, we're all trying to teach the same thing, and we're all trying to live our lives.
Yeah, I really agree with what you've just said there. I think there needs to be put a stop to that, where my religion's better than yours and it's higher than yours, and none of that matter. Religion is man-made first and foremost. I believe that. We're all here to be a good human being, and at the end of the day, if you've got your good values, then that's all you need to follow.
Cool, I agree. We're in alignment on that one, Aalpa, 100%. As I'm conscious of time, and you've been very generous with your time this morning, so thank you very much. Before we wrap up, before we finish up, I've got two more questions really, and the first one's going to be very easy. Do you have a particular book that you fall back on? You mentioned Neville Goddard earlier on, but is there something else that is really one that you always go back to?
Yeah, so Neville Goddard, Power of Awareness, is the one that I always go back to. But aside from that, as I say, it's the Bhagavad Gita. If I look at that and I read it, I'm studying it at the moment, but when I look at all of that, everything that I've learned about personal growth, development, and what we've learned in Thinking into Results is all written in the Bhagavad Gita. So when I look at that and I read it and I understand it, and I think, well, all of this I've been studying for the last 12 years, just in a different way, as you said earlier, that, everybody says the same thing, but they just say it in a different way. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it is that book. If I was to sum it up in one book, then I can't, because they're both on par. What Neville talks about, the power of awareness, and what the Bhagavad Gita talks about is exactly the same.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we'll share that in the comment section as well. So if two more questions. One is, if you were to talk to not quite baby Aalpa, but maybe teenage Aalpa, and be able to give some advice to yourself a few years ago, what would that be?
Oh, that's a difficult question. I think it would be I've always been fearless. So my parents have always told me from a very young age, I've always been fearless. But I think it would be to follow your passion, but get clear with what it is that you want. Don't follow the tribe. Create your own tribe and really get clear with what it is that you want. And don't go for what other people are doing or having. Make sure it is something that you really, really want. So to sum it up, it will be create your own tribe and do, have a passion about what it is that you want to do and follow it. And don't listen to what anybody else is going to tell you. If it's something that's burning inside of you, it's burning inside of you for a reason. Go after it and do it.
Great advice. I've a little tagline that I have on most of my emails, which is, it came about from the general manager of a company I was working for years ago. He always had "dare to be the best," on the bottom of his emails, and that really resonated with me. But then I was thinking about that over the years, and it's like, okay, I'll take that. So dare to be the best, and I added one word to the end of it: you. Dare to be the best you. And yeah. And the very last question, what else do we need to know about Aalpa?
What else do you want to know?
There's a thing in Ireland, they say, is it true that if you ask a Cork person a question, they answer you with a question? So maybe you have some Cork roots.
I honestly don't know. I think we've shared quite a lot here in the hour that we've spoken, but what else do people need to know about? Well, you can find me on YouTube. You can find me on the social media handles. But I'm just here to help anybody who feels that they've got a passion inside of them and they don't know how to get it out. Then I'm here to help you in whichever way I can.
Perfect. Perfect. A great way to end, Aalpa. Thank you very, very much for being on the show today. It's been an honor. It's been a privilege to have you here, and I'm sure our listeners will get as much out of this conversation as I did.
Thank you.